SeniorLivingGuide.com podcast discusses topics which are relevant to the everyday lives of seniors and their caregivers. We are joined by experts who share their knowledge on a variety of issues. SeniorLivingGuide.com podcast offers solutions and resources to create the best quality of life as we age. And now, let's welcome your host, Darlene Mahoney.
Does the idea of searching for senior housing solutions seem overwhelming and you're not even sure where to begin? SeniorLivingGuide.com makes senior housing search, home care, home health, as well as many resources available to you right at your fingertips in one easy to navigate website. So visit us today at SeniorLivingGuide.com. And I would like to express our gratitude to the SeniorLivingGuide.com podcast sponsors, Terabella Senior Living, where seniors unlock a richer, more rewarding lifestyle for assisted living and memory care in a warm, welcoming environment. And LiveDry. LiveDry adult incontinence products designed for moderate to severe incontinence issues. LiveDry provides reliable all-day and all-night protection. Quick absorbing, high capacity, and odor control helps you feel more confident when you wear LiveDry. And today I am super excited to have Donnie Green. She leads the North Central Texas Area Agency on Aging since 1996 and has responsibilities for administrating federal programs for older adults and family caregivers. She has prior work experience at a hospital-based geriatric case manager and director of a hospital-based senior membership program. She holds a master's degree in gerontology. Did I say that correctly?
Yes.
Oh my goodness. I didn't know that there was such a thing.
Yes, there is.
Well, that's perfect because I have a feeling that it falls right into what we want to talk about today as far as some of your expertise. I've been wanting to talk about elder abuse for some time because I think people don't talk about it. And it can happen in many forms. It can happen in a physical way, an emotional way, and it can I think it's important to know what to look for and to know if it's happening to you or if you're the one doing it. So I appreciate you joining.
Well, I appreciate you discussing the topic. It's a hard one. There are a lot of sensitivities and stigmas, but it's a very, very frequent phenomenon. One that, is common but under-recognized and underreported. So hats off to you for raising the issue.
Yeah, I think it's really important. I really want our seniors to be safe and secure and not have that. We talk about kids, what happens to kids with child abuse and things like that. And it definitely happens with seniors, especially seniors that may be unable to care for themselves. They're losing some of their abilities to, brush their own hair or what we call ADLs. Oh my gosh.
Activities of daily living.
I'm literally thinking, I'm trying to remember what it stands for. But when you start losing those and you start becoming dependent on someone else, I think that's where you can maybe kind of fall into that trap.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what have you seen in the work that you've done that are some of the signs that maybe someone that is a senior and is being cared for, some things that they need to be cognizant of so that they recognize it? Because when you're in it, sometimes you don't recognize it because it just becomes life, especially if it's a slow process.
Absolutely. Yeah, so it might be helpful to talk about the major categories into which mistreatment can fall. Abuse, you framed it really well. Abuse, can include physical abuse. It can include things like, treating someone roughly or hitting or shoving. But physical abuse can also include things like denying someone or medications, or perhaps over medicating
Mm,
someone, and that can be a big issue both in the community as well as in long-term care facilities. There's been a lot of work over the last couple of decades to discourage facilities from using medications to kind of sedate people instead of, you know, treating the issue. Abuse can also include emotional abuse. So um, that captures things like name calling or um, belittling behavior or language, telling someone that she's stupid, discounting their opinion. Um, and then, in addition to abuse, there's also neglect, which is a little more subtle. But neglect can include things like denying somebody medical treatment, not getting someone to the doctor, not giving someone her medications, or not ensuring that someone within their care is being housed and clothed and fed,
mhm.
and that their hygiene is maintained. It's interesting too that neglect can involve caregiver neglect. It can also involve self-neglect. And interestingly enough, that is the major reason why people make referrals to adult protective services programs. It accounts for close to half of all referrals that are made. And that can be a person who is wandering, someone who perhaps is living with dementia and is having difficulty maintaining the household. It can look very different depending on whether it's abuse, neglect, and then as a gerontologist, I'm also concerned about exploitation, which is using somebody else's money or goods for personal use and not for the benefit of that person.
Yeah, that's a huge array of what would be abusive to a senior. I didn't even think about like the financial side of it. I know that, we've talked about scams and different things, but um, if you are taking advantage of someone for financial gain, that's abusive
Mhm.
for sure.
Although, with this topic, there are usually many shades of gray.
Mm,
And so if I'm an older person and I have a lot of money and my children convince me that they need something,
mhm.
whether it's rent or a new car, and I give them that money, that's not
No,
exploitation.
no, that's not.
If I'm making a gift, where it becomes really tricky with abuse, neglect, and exploitation is
Mhm.
where it's not really clear whether the person has capacity to understand the decisions that she's making.
Yeah.
So I, as a competent adult, I can refuse to go to the doctor. I can refuse to take my medications. And if I understand that, well, my blood sugar may get out of control or my blood pressure may get out of control, I have the right to do that. It just becomes so much more problematic when it's not really clear whether I really do understand the consequences of those decisions. And those are the thorny kinds of issues that adult protective services caseworkers have to sort through.
Sure, sure. So to kind of break it down, starting with the physical abuse, what are some signs that a senior that's listening to the podcast may say, you know what, that's not great. And it's kind of happening to me. Or as a caregiver that might realize that maybe they've lost a little bit of control or they're struggling on their end. So they're really taking it out on their mom, their dad, or whoever they're taking care of. So, what are some things that can kind of bring them back to getting in the right place on both of those fronts, on the actual physical side?
Mhm. Yeah, and physical abuse is probably one of the easiest types of maltreatment to recognize. So, the signs and symptoms of physical abuse can include bruises, cuts. Sometimes the person who's being abused, you can see it in the demeanor where the person who's being abused may withdraw when in the presence of the abuser or may look away, may feel intimidated. So that body language can sometimes serve as a helpful sign.
Hmm.
Um, uh, Somebody who has lost an awful lot of weight and doesn't really know why. I've worked with families who have denied food as punishment, um, it's not always immediately apparent. And it's doubly difficult if you're not familiar with the person who may be abused or may not be familiar with the person whom you suspect to be an abuser, if you don't know the dynamic between the two.
Right, right. And hearing all that for me, it just like it just grips my heart. It's heartbreaking to hear that that's happening, and I know it is. It's happening everywhere, but knowing that seniors, especially those, not to discount those that aren't, but those that have cognitive issues, because they don't understand what's happening. So they're dealing with so many different things, and that's just an added layer of stress and anxiety that they really don't need. And the physical side of it, I totally understand where, the food starts getting limited, or you start yanking someone around because they're not getting in the shower fast enough, or they're not getting out of bed fast enough. And so you find yourself frustrated and you're actually conducting yourself in an abusive manner to someone. And I think that can lead from multiple areas. One is caregiver burnout, I'm sure, is a contributing factor. And then
Absolutely.
and then I also think it could be the relationship you've had with that person. So I know that if you've had a rough relationship growing up, you
Uh-huh.
weren't the best of, mother daughter, mother father, or child, adult, parent. And then you find yourself taking care of your parent because that may be the only alternative financially, that you need to endure on. That you do find that you're losing your patience, and you're doing things you wouldn't do, especially if you don't have that previous relationship.
Yeah. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And, developing an illness, is not something that tends to heal
Right.
family trauma.
No,
So whatever
never.
dysfunction may have been present is usually intensified,
Yeah.
in some cases. And, clearly not all caregivers are abusive. But I
No,
think it's
no.
important
Yeah.
to recognize that it can be very, very stressful. And it does tend to make a lot of demands on the caregiver. It usually has physical demands. It often has financial demands. It it often places a lot of demands on the caregiver's health. And we often see caregivers going without sleep, going without proper nutrition, kind of constricting their social networks. Sometimes they have to, cut back on their work hours or resign in order to take on these care responsibilities.
Yeah.
And so there are just, several layers of stressors. And, but, a lot of people find it to be very fulfilling. Most caregivers do exceptionally well. But if a caregiver is getting to the point where, it's more than a bad day, and that's totally normal, that's a natural stress reaction. Mom was up last night, I didn't get any sleep, I'm exhausted, I've got a deadline I have to meet. That's not particularly a cause for concern. It's when those feelings are persistent and continual, and it turns from gee, this is a really rough situation, to, oh my gosh, I'm so angry at my mother. And and again, it's normal and natural to get frustrated with situations, but that's where caregiver stress can lead to caregiver burnout. And if there's not some kind of support that's provided,
Yeah.
whether it's a support group or respite care or in-home services or financial assistance, that's where there's a risk of it progressing from burnout to abuse, neglect, to a lesser extent, exploitation. Exploitation is I think, tied more closely to kind of financial need.
Right.
Um, but again, one of the things that I've kind of committed my working career to is providing support for both older adults as well as family caregivers, particularly at that point where, again, kind of the bad day turns into a bad week, turns into a bad month.
Right. And that can become resentfulness. That can be triggered by just consistently doing it and not getting that caregiver support that is so available. And I know we're going to provide a couple resources today for folks as well, which at the end of the day, that's what it's about. It's about listening, talking, having good conversations, and then finding solutions when there's problems. And I do think that the you could start getting perfectly good relationship, and then the caregiving. If you're not taking care of yourself, you're going to become resentful. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, um, and I know we talked a little bit about the emotional side of it as well, about the name calling and things like that. And I feel like I've actually seen some of that, as a child, I kind of saw that a little bit in some different family dynamics. And I remember thinking that I didn't love it at the time, but didn't recognize it as abusive. And that can come a lot of times from resentfulness, just the name calling that you just start getting frustrated and that's what starts happening, but you can't let it get to that.
Yeah, and what really matters is the impact the behavior is having. And in some families, there's just a lot of kidding and name calling. In my household, our nicknames are Stinky and and,
I
and
love that.
Loser. You know, that's just
Mhm.
our way of interacting. Um, but with abuse, neglect, what's really important is there harm created to the older person? Is the person withdrawing because of the way she's being treated? Is she being denied opportunities um, to have visitors because, the family restricts access because, they're embarrassed that she may say something or do something that's inappropriate? You know, that's where it kind of crosses over from kind of reasonable concern and safeguards into harm. And that's the point at which some kind of intervention is necessary. And in terms of abuse, neglect, and exploitation, it's pretty staggering to look at the incidents. So it's estimated that about 1 in 10 older adults, people age 65 and over, will experience abuse, neglect, or exploitation during a year's time. And if you look at the number of Americans age 65 and over, we're looking at about 60 million people. Well,
Wow.
if you do the math, 1 in 10, oh my goodness, that's around 6.5 million people per year. And in those cases, only about somewhere between 3 and 5% of all incidents are reported to
Yeah.
Adult Protective Services. To me, that's what's most concerning, is that, a lot of people don't see it, or they may notice that something is a little bit off, but they don't want to get involved. They
Right.
don't want to get in trouble. They don't want to be responsible for the person having to go to a nursing home. And um, the nation's system of adult protective services is structured so that all reports are kept confidential. So a caseworker's not going to come out and say, your neighbor, Donnie,
Mm-hmm.
told me she was concerned about you.
Right.
They'll do their investigation. And, um, their approach is always to try to get people the supports they need, to support them in the least restrictive setting. um, they don't have the power to remove people from their homes. In some situations, if it's an imminent threat to somebody's health or safety, they can go through the court, but that happens so infrequently. So, our message is, if you have any reasonable suspicion, just report what you know. You don't have to make a determination of whether there's abuse, neglect, or exploitation going on, but you just need to share any reasonable suspicions
Yeah.
so that the experts can do their investigations and can determine if there is a threat to health or safety, determine if the person has capacity to make the decisions that he or she is making.
Mm-hmm.
So, so again, I just really applaud you for dealing with this issue.
At Terabella Senior Living, seniors unlock a richer, more rewarding lifestyle for assisted living and memory care, offering daily activities, home-style dining, and 24-hour care in a warm, welcoming environment. Tour today to see the comfort and care we offer at Terabella.
If you or someone you care for is dealing with moderate to heavy incontinence, you've experienced products that leak, and that is never acceptable. Live Dry products combine high capacity with fast absorption and a secure fit to help eliminate leaks and improve comfort, even during extended wear. With Live Dry, it's protection you can trust.
Thousands of positive reviews on Amazon can't be wrong. Search LIVDRY on Amazon. Live Dry products are available at Amazon.com and Walmart.com.
Yeah, because I do feel like when there is any form of elder abuse, that elder person will experience a mental health issues and different things that I think it's starting to get recognized in seniors, because I think a lot of people think, oh, they're older, they're just going to be depressed. That's just the way that they are. It's just part of getting old. And that's not necessarily true. Just because you're older doesn't mean there should be an expectation that you're going to have a decline in depression and mental health and not address it. And I do think that you definitely would have some of those issues with people that are experiencing any form of elder abuse.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah, and that's concerning to me. I think that, we get one life, and in the grand scheme of things, it's very short, I should say. And you should be able to live your best life for as long as you're here and you're healthy and you're able to do it. Or even if you're not healthy, there's still joys and expectations of a daily living that should be provided to everyone.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. So you kind of mentioned adult protective services. So if you think that maybe your neighbor's being abused, or maybe your sister's not taking very good care of your mother, but she's not going to allow you to get involved in anything, or whatever the case might be. I'm just throwing out some general scenarios. Do you just go online and Google adult protective services?
You sure can. And each state has its own adult protective services agency. So you would need to Google it to find the agency for your state. The other option would be to contact the Elder Care Locator, which is a program of the federal government. It doesn't operate the adult protective services system for the states, but it can provide that information, and it also connects people with their area agencies on aging.
Okay.
In some states, the area agencies on aging do perform investigations. In most states, they're separate, but the area agencies on aging are wonderful resources in terms of providing that education and support and connecting both older adults who need some in-home help as well as caregivers with support services. So the elder care locator is at 800-677-1116. Again, 800-677-1116. So if you're not a Googler, you can call and get the
Exactly.
contact information that way as well.
And I do have the link that you did provide me, so I do appreciate that. And we're going to include that in the description as well, so that could be an easy click. And then I know that you provided one for the area on agency for your area, which is nctgoc.org/aging/services/. And I will include that in the description as well, because that was a mouthful.
Yes,
So,
it is.
yes. But I do appreciate the fact that, Central Texas is working in this arena, and they have the area on agency that's able to help
Well,
folks
but
in that area.
it's not unique to our area. We are part of a national
Okay.
network of services that was created by the Older Americans Act. So, with your national audience, anybody in the United States or its territories would have an area agency on aging that serves that area.
That's good to know. So no matter where you are in the US, there is an area in aging that's actively able to provide the services
Information,
and
resources,
that caregiver support.
and caregiver support. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Since 2001, our federal legislation has provided funding to provide various supports to caregivers.
Yeah.
So the area agencies on aging can provide information and referral, can provide respite care to caregivers. Some of them will pay for counseling programs, education, support groups, you name it. And all of those services are provided at no charge to older adults and family caregivers who qualify.
I think those are definitely the keys to reduce the elder abuse that goes on, is to continue to provide those, that support, but you have to look for it. You can't just not look for it. So if you're listening and you feel like you're frustrated, you're taking care of mom, dad, their ADLs, the daily living, they're declining, and you're getting frustrated or resentful, you got to start looking for support. You've got to start looking for resources. You can't just continue down that path, because it's not fair to the person you're taking care of. And it's definitely not fair to yourself as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I know there's even Facebook caregiving groups. My
Yes.
girlfriend was telling me about that. I thought that was really cool. And it's the
Uh-huh.
area that you live, so you can get together with, people that are your same age or same interest or whatever, that are going through a lot of the similar things you might be going through with an aging parent. So that's amazing. So is there anything else that we didn't touch on? I know that, we didn't do the financial crimes too much, or not financial crimes, but financial abuse, where maybe you're taking, just taking advantage of mom, maybe writing checks out of her checkbook for things that she didn't tell you could, things like that. That's not okay either. And I think that's something that, if that's happening, if you see a family member or something like that doing that, it has to be addressed as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. And that sometimes can be really easy to do, to take things that maybe weren't authorized when you're caring for someone that's older, and then also clearly the cognitive issues as well.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. One of the red flags we see with exploitation is someone being coerced into signing a power of attorney for business affairs, and then that agent just kind of going wild,
Yeah.
saying, "Well, I'm the agent, and I'm going to buy a new car, new house, and
Yeah.
and mom's going to continue living in the in the house with the leaky roof."
The van down by the river. So,
That's right.
so I will tell you, if someone has cognitive issues, that attorney should not be entertaining the idea of taking them on as a client, because of those cognitive issues, because they don't have the ability to make those decisions. They just don't.
Yeah, I mean, one of the requirements for executing a power of attorney is having the capacity to understand the decision. Now, people can have early dementia and still make reasoned decisions.
That is
So
true.
it's not a cut and dry thing.
Right.
And, that's a challenge for adult protective services. It's a challenge for the attorney as well. But yeah, if somebody, no longer understands the consequences of financial decisions, that ship has sailed. Um, that person should not sign a power of attorney. And at that point, really the only alternative would be to look at a guardianship.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I do think as an attorney, if you're having and I'm sure that they're well aware of this, if that person comes in and they're bringing the person they're going to make power of attorney and letting them do all the talking, that's when that person is no longer your client. It's the person getting the power of attorney that becomes your client. And that is very messy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
I can tell you walked the walk.
I have walked the walk. I know exactly with the whole attorney thing. So, but yes, but I will tell you at the end of the day, having a really, really good ironclad power of attorney is a life changer. It is a game changer
Absolutely.
when you start dealing with your parent or whatever the case may be, and they start needing that extra level of care and they aren't
Yes.
able to make those decisions. It can
Yeah.
be really frightening for them. I
Yeah.
know that I had power of attorney from my dad, and I told him I could see that he was really struggling financially. So I started working on it because he did have dementia. And one thing he said to me, I'll never forget. I told him, I said, Dad, you don't have to worry about the money anymore. I'm taking care of it. The level of and I thought he was going to be mad because I thought he was going to think I was taking that away from him. He was so relieved. He was like elated.
Yeah.
And I did not expect that response.
Yeah. I had a similar experience with my mom. She broke a hip and refused to go to the hospital because there was a $75 copay with
Oh my
their
goodness.
insurance. But she had signed the power of attorney, and, I too have just told her, Mom, we're not going to worry about the money. We're just going to worry about getting you what you need, and I'll take care of the rest of it. And, you know, surprisingly, that was freeing to
Yeah,
her.
it was. I was just so surprised at how freeing it was to him because, as a parent, I never knew how much money my dad made. I never went into my mom's purse. I mean, I was never privy to those things because that's kind of the way that I was raised. And so I thought that he was just going to not be happy about me being involved in his finances at all. But the level of relief, I was so glad because I was, tensing up for him to be ticked. So, but he wasn't. So yay.
Well done.
Well done. Yes. So before we sign off, I just wanted to make sure there wasn't anything that we missed that you wanted to talk about or share that I missed.
I think we've hit the highlights. Again, kind of the two summary messages that I would want to leave are, first of all, if you do see something, say something.
Yes.
Don't worry about whether um, it's real or not. If you have a reasonable suspicion, go ahead and report that and let the professionals kind of tease that out. And then, the second message is that there are supports that are available. If you're concerned about an older person, with or without caregiver involvement, you know, turn to the area agencies on aging for information about community-based services. We provide services like Meals on Wheels and rides and case management services to help people stay in their homes, and do a lot of work to support caregivers. We really recognize the vital role that caregivers play. About two-thirds of all of the long-term services and supports that older people and people with disabilities receive are from unpaid family caregivers. So they are really the backbone of our nation's system
Yeah.
of long-term services and supports. And by golly, we want to reinforce them. We want to support them. But if somebody is getting to the point where they are taking those frustrations out on the person for whom they care, then that's concerning, and that there does need to be an intervention, both in terms of support and in terms of a report as well.
You're right. You're right. Oh my gosh, this was such a great conversation. I'm so glad that we finally have had this conversation on this podcast, because we really haven't. So I do appreciate your time today.
It's a pleasure talking with you.
Absolutely. And if you enjoyed this podcast, please like, comment, subscribe anywhere you listen to music or podcasts. We have over 125 episodes. We are in season 6, and we really, really want to be a great resource for those that you love as well as yourself. Thanks for listening.